budget deliberations. Today is Monday, April 29th, 2024, and we are continuing the department presentation portion of the 2024-2025 automatic budget process. Will everyone please stand up and join me as we salute our flag? Madam Secretary, will you please take the roll?
Alderman Archiola.
Present.
Alderman Beatty.
Alderman Beatty wants to be excused, Madam Secretary.
Thank you. Alderman Bevan. Here. Alderman Casey.
Here.
Alderman Federico.
Here.
Alderman Fowler.
Here.
Alderman Healy.
Here.
Alderman Jenkins. Here. Alderman Marlowe.
Here.
Alderman Mulrennan.
Here.
Alderman Pacelli.
Alderman Pacelli is going to be late, Madam Secretary.
Thank you. Alderman Smith. Here. Alderman Vitro.
Here.
Alderman Vitale. Here. Alderman Willis.
Alderman Willis would like to be excused, Madam Secretary.
Thank you. 12 are present.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We do have a quorum. Is there a motion to come out of recess?
So moved.
Second. Motion is made and seconded to come out of recess. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are out of recess.
Chair,
Alderman,
point of information.
Alderman Healy.
At our last meeting, Wednesday, the 24th, the fire department, Chief Fabrizi, indicated at that meeting that, to his recollection, this was the first time that the Board of Aldermen had funded the fire department to meet its contractual obligations. And I was actually surprised by that, because the Board of Aldermen has a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that all contractual obligations are met when we formulate and pass a budget. And so going back to April 19th of 2023 of the Baltimore Alderman minutes, Chief Fabrizi is a new chief, and he was a deputy chief then, but Chief Ito stated at that time that 90% of the budget is contractual wages as it was passed at our final budget meeting at that time. So it's important to note that the board did meet the contractual obligations. It will be meeting its contractual obligations, going forward. So I think that was just an oversight, but that's a good point of clarification. We always need to meet contractual obligations when we finalize a budget for every department. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Healy, for that clarification. The first department on our agenda is the City Clerk, page 22. Karen Fortunati, good evening.
Good evening. So I'll keep this brief. I know you may have a long night ahead of you, but things are going well in the City Clerk's office. You can see that this year's budget is a little bit less than the prior year, and that's because we did a restructuring of one of the positions in the office. Previously, there were 3 assistant clerk positions and 2 clerk A's. And what we did, working with Tania in the Human Resources Department, we changed one of the assistant city clerk positions to a step lower, an intermediate position called the Certified Vitals Clerk. And so that's working out very well. So right now I have 1 vacant clerk A position, and we're just seeing how we manage the workload as is right now. So I'll take any questions.
Any questions for the City Clerk Department? Alderman Federico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Ms. Fortunati. I don't have a question, but I think it's important to call out when you department heads are coming before us and you've identified savings and you've passed those savings on to the taxpayer. I think it's great, it's commendable, and I just want to thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions for the city clerk's department? I don't see any. Thank you, Karen. You got her off easy tonight.
So I'm going to take a seat behind, I think elections is next, and I'll let the registrars take the 2 seats here. Is that right? Is it registrars? Okay.
Thank you, Karen. That's a good idea. The next department on our budget hearing to schedule is Register of Voters. Registrars Debra Fellenbaum and Kerri Rowland.
I think you have to talk to
That's
this.
Kerri.
I'm Kerri Rowland. Yes. May we approach with some, just a handout about early voting?
I'm not sure if the microphones are on.
This one? This one's on, right?
Okay, yeah.
Can Debra come forward and bring you the schedule for early voting? So again, good evening. I'm Kerri Rowland, and this is Debra Fellenbaum. Thank you for letting us present our budget to you. Are we going to start with the Registrar of Voters or elections?
Yeah, let's start with the Registrar of Voters.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. So the schedule that we gave you is to just give you an overview as to how many extra days of election or voting days that will be before us going forward. This is not something that's going to go away. It's something that's here to stay. We just had 4 days of early voting for the presidential preference primary a few weeks ago. Things went very well. We're working on the best practices, as we always do, to make sure that we're staffed properly to accommodate the amount of voters that want to vote in this capacity, but also be mindful that we're not overstaffing and wasting money. And balancing between what people want to do, whether they are coming out early to vote, using the absentee ballots for the reasons they're allowed to do so, or voting in person on election day. So we've learned quite a bit. But as you'll see on that schedule, if we have an August primary, there'll be 7 days of early voting. And of course, in the general election, and all general elections going forward as of right now, there will be 14 days of early voting. So with that said, that affects our Registrar of Voters office as well. And so that's why we've asked for extra money in our overtime account to allow for the deputy registrars of voters to be compensated for the extra hours that they will be working. As you know, I think, that our office hours are 9 to 1 normally. So just with the addition of early voting, which for the most part runs from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., there are 2 days in the general election window that will run from 8 in the morning until 8 at night. That's well beyond the hours of our normal business. So in order to utilize the most knowledgeable personnel regarding elections, our deputies and our 2 seasonal temporaries, we've asked for additional funding in the overtime and seasonal temporary accounts. We also saw that the account for travel and conferences was cut. We asked you not to cut that because we are looking down the pike at additional training, which we've gone through quite a bit, preparing for early voting as it is. But there will be a new computerized voter registration system. Hopefully sooner rather than later, there will be new tabulators and things that go along with that, so that we want to keep up to date with our training and make sure that we are able to then pass along to the rest of the staff and to poll workers that training. And then finally, in the capital outlay line item, we asked for a fireproof file cabinet because we're required by law to keep our voter registration cards in a fireproof safe. Additionally, we would like to utilize space in those fireproof cabinets, which by law, at the end of every night of early voting, ballots need to be kept in a fireproof safe on a daily basis. So we don't really have the space needed. We barely made it through early voting with the space that we had. So that's why we've asked for that. We will make whatever accommodations need to be made. It just will require more maneuvering of ballots than that we like. Would you like to add anything in addition to that?
I would just like to reiterate that early voting is not going away, and the amounts that we have asked for, we spent a lot of time on. We're good. I think we could make it happen, except if we have the August primary. Then will we be back looking for contingency funds as we have in the past? We've always tried to lay out to you when we had election day registration, whatever was coming, we looked, we gave our best guess, we defined our best practice after the event. So I think with the amount, we can certainly work within it, but if there's a way, I do appreciate the Finance Board giving us a little bit more than what the mayor did. That was very helpful. And again, we'll be okay unless we have an August primary. And like last year, the biggest factor was that we had an audit after the fact. This time we had a closed vote audit.
No,
It was a closed vote
no,
last time. This
right,
time
right.
was a audit with the state, that these things are mandated, we have to do them, and it costs money, so.
And with that, we will open up for questions about the registrar voters portion of the budget.
I just got two questions.
Sure.
One, how many polling places are involved?
In a state and federal election, which is what this year is, there are 9 polling locations. In addition to that, we have early voting, which right now is going to be held at Parsons Government Center Gymnasium. For the presidential preference primary, we held it in our office. And in a municipal year, we have 8 polling locations.
So eight for the municipal, how many for the state?
9.
9? And of course, that already passed, the presidential was just 1.
Well, for the presidential preference primary, we had all 9 polling places activated on election day with 4 days of early voting conducted from our registrar voters office.
And what is the cost for all these extra days we're having now?
So that doesn't really apply to our budget. I don't know if anybody has questions about our registrar of voters budget. We can go to the elections and answer that more in depth regarding poll workers, because they get paid out of the elections account. So I don't know if you want to just transition into that part of or wait.
I will say that in the overtime account, we are now $842 in the red because we had to pay our deputies, and that is the extra that it took the deputies to work those 4 days of early voting. That's why when we asked for $15,000, that would be with the understanding that there could be 3 elections, but that would just be for this year, 3 elections. And this one is already passed in April, so that would be 2 elections, which would be.
Thank you for that. Alderman Marlowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. Hi, Deb and Kerri. It's probably going to be that we go to the elections account, because I was wondering if there is any state reimbursement for early voting, and if so, what would that be? And is that a one-time thing? Is that, forever that you get reimbursed?
One time.
It was a one-time grant. It was $10,500. We received it in the middle to end of January, I believe, of this year. It's, as far as we have been told, all that we're going to get. And I can tell you that our payroll for the 4 days of early voting, and this is just the poll workers that we hire, not our office staff, was approximately $32,000 to staff 4 days of early voting and a primary election day.
At 9 polling places.
Thank you. If I could just follow up, Mr. Chair, with another question is, where the tabulators and the equipment that you have, is that under the elections account or is that under the registrars?
So the tabulators themselves, so when we buy ballots for each election, when we have any maintenance issues or have to buy batteries for the tabulators or the battery backup units, and the programming of the memory cards to hold the data that, the ballots cast and how they're counted. That all comes out of the elections account.
Okay, so with the amount of ballots, how do you best guess how many ballots you're going to need in early voting?
That's a great question, because it's sort of a guesstimate. We took, for the presidential preference primary, the possibility of a 20 to 30% turnout, and then tried to divide that up between how many people are going to come out for absentee balloting, how many people are going to come out for early voting, and how many will go to the polling place. And unfortunately, this was a very, very low, at least in my tenure, it was only 6%. So well below the normal turnout for presidential preference primaries. So we over-ordered. I think we did about 20 to 30% from each category.
We were recommended by the state to have at least 30% for early voting alone. Because, again, they didn't know it's a, guesstimate.
And I think what you're really asking is how are we going to do that for the presidential? And unfortunately, we're going to end up ordering in total well over 100% turnout because we don't know if voters will want to utilize the 14 days of early voting or they'll use the election day as normal. Now, in other states, we've seen, and we'll dive deeper into this as we get closer to having to order ballots, but 20 to 30% turnout happens in early voting in some of the states. And we know that we will get an 80 to 82% turnout here in Milford. That's been the way it's been for the last 3 or 4 presidential elections that Debra and I have worked in. So the question will be, how do we divide that up? And my guess is we're going to have to do something like 40-50% of a turnout in early voting, and then a 50-60% turnout at the polls, and also factoring in probably a 10 or 20% absentee ballot count. And you have to keep in mind, it's not just like total, because we have to get ballots that are specific to the state rep races. So the 117th, the 118th, and 119th are all part of Milford. So there's 3 different ballot styles that we have to take. So we take turnout based on each one of those. As you know, the 118th is all within Milford, and the 117th is just the 4 and high end of town.
Thank you. And just with the tabulators I had asked before about, do they get fixed, remanufactured? Does somebody come down and certify them every year? How long do they last, and do you see us having to purchase new ones?
So LHS, who services the tabulators, would never allow you to say fixed. They are repaired as needed, and they are maintained on a yearly basis. So the thing that scares us the most, what we saw the last time we had a summer primary, these tabulators don't hold up well under the heat. They actually melt. The motherboard unit, the way they're soldered in place is sort of old-fashioned, and when the temperatures are really high, it melts slightly, which then forces the reader not to accept ballots. So we had that the last time we had a summer primary, which I think was 2022. So we're really hopeful that we don't have an August primary, because that will put us at risk for working tabulators come November, because they are not manufacturing these parts or these tabulators anymore. We are literally cannibalizing from other states their machines that have become obsolete. They've gotten new machines for counting ballots, and we're using that to repair machines that are no longer working. When I say we, again, I mean LHS. We don't maintain machines at all.
Right.
They are the certified maintainer in the state of Connecticut.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr.
Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Good evening, Kerri and Deb. On the seasonal temporary, are those individuals who are hired under that line item helpful in the early voting days?
Absolutely. They are experts in CVRS, and the difference between early voting and a election day is we are required for every voter to be processed through the Connecticut voter registration system, the computer system that we register voters in. So they, and our deputies and ourselves, we're all processing voters with that system and creating labels because those ballots get put into envelopes, and we need to be able to identify which district they're in so that we can keep count and keep track so that they cannot go and vote again on an early voting day, or vote again on election day, or vote in another town, or vote by absentee ballot, or do a same-day registration in any other town.
So they will be hired to do all that?
Absolutely. We will utilize our staff as much as humanly possible.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alderman Arcaiola.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Hi, Kerri. Hi, Deb. I just had a quick question about the file cabinet. So if that line item isn't met, would the current storage be in violation of state law?
We believe that we can make it work now, but we wanted to start talking about it with all of you and with the mayor and the Board of Finance, because we believe that over time, we will see people turning out more in early voting than they do on election day, and we are worried about the storage capacity. In addition to that, those filing cabinets are utilized for our voter registration cards. We are required, even though we put them in a computer system, to maintain a backup, if you will, file, hard copy, and it fills up, and it becomes, my arms are only this long and the drawers are this long. So it's always easier to keep those files a little bit closer so that we are not, you know, in a presidential election, we see close to 2,000, at least, in that September-October window, of changes to people's voter registration, which is a card in and out of the file, hundreds on a daily basis in that September-October window.
Thank you.
And they also get very heavy. When you pull them out, they hang down. We had 2 repaired this year because they just were too heavy and they shimmy and they lose their shape and then they won't close. They have to close, they have to lock.
Okay.
So we had 2 repairs. We saved a lot of money, but we just know that when I think we got it in 2017, the other one. So it's just time. We're going to have to keep replacing because they do break down, even with repairs. They're not going to last forever.
And we actually maintain them ourselves. We pull all the cards out, we pull the drawer out, we've vacuumed out the concrete, we've lubricated the shelving and the wheels, you know, like you would do with your garage door, to try to get as much life out of them as possible. But we just wanted to bring that to your attention that, you know, we know it's a big expense, and so we want to, if we don't get it this year, we'll be back and we'll ask for it next year.
Okay. And I remember you both here 2 years ago requesting a new tabulator.
We still are.
I know. And I was wondering, in that time, repairs have had to be made to the current unit you have? Okay.
Yes, in the presidential preference primary during testing, we had 2 that were failed, which is actually really good.
Very good.
So they were repaired immediately and available for use on election day because we had enough time. We test as soon as we can so that if there is need of repair, we can get it repaired and returned to us or repaired right in our office so that they are ready to go on election day.
Okay. And one final question, if that's okay. Are you both present for all of these are you all both working all of these early voting days?
During the presidential preference primary, we were. I was not on the Saturday. I was out setting up the polling places.
With me.
Right, and the 2 deputies were there. And then
So still working?
yes, and then I took a lunch break that day. I didn't the other days, but that Saturday, the last day, I took a lunch break and came back to count and finalize and make sure they were locked and sealed and all the things, because we felt very strongly that the buck stops with us, and if we are going to take that ultimate responsibility, we wanted to be present. I'm not sure I can do all hours of the 14 days and prepare all of the things and do voter registration in the mass that we do, so I may not make it all 14 days this time.
And we shouldn't. Our goal is to, like, if Kerri can work one day, then have my deputy Joyce work with her so that you have the checks and the balance.
Sure.
And if I'm working, then Laura will work and we'll work together. And maybe have one of the seasonals rather than 2. Again, we don't know. It's just a guess on how many people are going to show up. And the more it's advertised, hopefully it'll be a better. And I think in time, it'll increase. But right now, it's just too new.
And that's our ideal goal, is to be able to work, 2 people off, 2 people on kind of thing. But I am extremely worried that we will not have the knowledge base of people to utilize CVRS to not have lines out and around the building. We could do a deep dive into what election day registration was like, where there were 500 people. The last two presidentials that was available, which required use of CVRS. It was a very labor-intensive day. And I anticipate that as much as we would like to save ourselves and not have to work, because there's administrative work that goes on before and after, I think that we are probably going to have to work most of those hours, yes. And as will all of our staff. But don't tell them.
Thank you. I don't think anybody can fault you guys for not working hard enough. So we're really appreciative for the time and effort that you put, especially with the constraints that you currently have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alderman Jenkins.
Thank you, Chairman Vitro. Through you to our registrars. Ms. Fellenbaum, you mentioned that the early voting is certainly not going away. And did I hear correctly that all 9 would be utilized for the summer presidential? And so that would be adequate, obviously, to handle, voter turnout at that point. How many poll workers are required at each of those stations?
So 1 moderator, 2 assistant registrars, 1 or 2 checkers per checker book, which varies based on the size of the polling place. So in an example, like Florin High School or Harborside Middle School, the 2 larger polling places, in a presidential will have 4 or 5 sections. Definitely not 5 because we'll have early voting, but 4. Orange Ave has 3 checker books, which is 6 poll workers, checkers. And then we are required to have ballot clerks for every line or every section of book. So in the examples that I just gave, there would be 4 ballot clerks. What we do is have 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, or a combination thereof utilizing unaffiliated voters as well. If it was 2 checker books, which is what the remaining would have except for Orange Ave and the big Harborside, then it would be 2 ballot clerks, 1 from each party, and then 2 tabulator tenders, 1 from each party. And then we are not required, but we often will utilize greeters, which are also known as demonstrators, so that if somebody has a question about how to vote before they come in, those questions can be answered. And those people are also utilized as fill-in when we have to give the lunch and dinner breaks throughout the day, so that they can step in and be a tabulator tender or a ballot clerk, and we cross-train them during our training period. So the question would be somewhere between 8 or 9 to 12 to 13 poll workers per polling place.
This year.
And what we do, when I say 1 or 2, we always try to hire 2, because since COVID, we have seen an increase in people calling in sick the night before, or having to leave early due to sickness. And that we see that more frequently in like the summer month, or like we did in April, there were some flu going around, and we saw an increased number of illnesses and people not able to work.
And are the hourly rates the same for all of those polling personnel? They vary based on where they're positioned, what
And
they're...
accountability, right.
Okay.
And there's stipends. They're not, we don't, we try to figure it out because we don't want anybody getting less than minimum wage. But we do it based on the amount of responsibility.
Average ballpark, what's the hourly?
15 to 25 or so for a moderator, assistant registrar. And then the minimum wage for the greeter, ballot clerk, and tabulator tender.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alderman Federico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the registrars. Can you clarify for me what would trigger an August summer primary? Because we've already had the presidential, right? So what would trigger a summer primary? Is that Senate or?
Oh, sorry. Right now, conventions are happening for all of the elected positions where delegates are applied and candidates are endorsed. And once those conventions take place, then there are what's called primary petitions for people who would like to challenge the result of that convention. So our office makes available primary petitions to candidates who are all within Milford. And the Secretary of the State makes available primary petitions for any multi-town representatives, state senate, Congress, and representative.
So every position that's on the November ballot except president?
Correct, that is
Pretty
correct,
much, okay.
yes. And
Thank you.
And the primary petition window closes June 11th.
Okay.
It starts at the end of a convention, and it ends on June 11th for everybody.
Okay, so by June 11th, you'll know if there's going to be any.
Within a few days,
Primaries.
because we do
Yeah.
have days to check those signatures and validate that it was a qualified petition, and we then inform the city clerk and the Secretary of the State that there would in fact be a primary here in Milford. So we do have 2 to 6 days, don't quote me on that, somewhere in there to check those signatures and validate that the petition is viable.
Okay. A question specific to the budget. Your regular wages account, you had requested a higher amount than the amount before us. Can you explain what the thinking was behind that increase? Is that additional hours?
Yes. So when Debra and I started, we recognized that we cannot get a salary increase in the middle of our term. But they increased our hours significantly in the middle of our term. So we were just trying to say, hey, don't forget about us, and look for some equity in the position of Registrar of Voters and what's required. From the time that I took office in 2007 and Debra shortly thereafter, the workload has increased tremendously. We didn't ask for the extra compensation when we got our certification, for example, and took the 8 classes down at UConn Stamford campus, or went to take our final exam in Hartford, or took our quizzes after each class at home at night. We didn't ask for extra money for all of the sessions that are required when there's voter registrations from 9 in the morning until 8 at night, or for the Saturday setup, we don't ask for extra compensation. But when this early voting was put on us as a mandated increase to our normal working hours, we felt it was time to say to you, the registrars of voters are working very, very hard, and our salary really is not compensating for the amount of time that we're putting in. And although we can't discuss it now, we are hopeful that we will be able to come to you similarly to some of the other department heads who are looking for equity in their salary, to talk to you in more depth about that. So that was our way of just putting up a, don't forget about us.
Okay, so a couple questions. I don't know if you'll know these off the top of your head. How many hours is your current job like expected for?
Well,
this
technically, our office hours are 9 to 1.
Okay,
So as elected officials, we see ourselves as working 24/7. Somewhere in the Secretary of the State wisdom, they have published my personal home phone number under somewhere as Registrar of Voters or Elections in Milford, Connecticut. And I bless my husband, who takes lots of phone calls during October as to, I'm wondering where I vote. So, when you start to calculate in all of the phone calls and all of the meetings that we attend and try to educate people, or the high school voter registration sessions, or the request to come to the senior center and talk about how the independent voting system works, we've just felt as though we do all of those things that are asked of us, and we're starting now to keep track of exactly how many hours a week do we work. So that when we do get the opportunity to come to you to talk about a salary increase for this position, not necessarily us, obviously, we're up for re-election as well, but whoever takes office in January of 2025 in this position, we are hopeful that we can advocate, as Rose Scarpa tirelessly advocated for these positions over the years, to just bring it up to speed to what the workload is currently.
Okay. Could you say, like, could you confirm if this is currently a 20-hour salary and you're asking for an increase to 30 or 35 hours? I don't know if the finance director can weigh in.
It doesn't really equate to that.
Okay.
Because when people think that we work one day a year, or at least they did. I think we've advocated well enough for people to know that, from January to June, we're doing the canvas within our office, and just that work alone, with the ERIC canvas and the other components, which is the interchange of information regarding people moving from state to state, not just within Connecticut anymore, that's increased our work within our office. Many towns, registrars, don't even come in and work. They don't know how to use CVRS. They hire out to do the testing of the tabulators and memory cards and ballots. Debra and I do that work because we know that elections have become under such scrutiny. We want you to be able to say, we don't understand, and we want to understand and be able to educate our population so they trust in our system. So there is no work within the realm of our duties that we don't perform. And once we've got a good handle on it, then sometimes when time allows, we get other people to do it. Or if we have to be in two places at the same time, I will work with Joyce, like in this Saturday setup, or Debra and the two deputies will be doing something else, so that we are dividing and conquering as much as possible and not farming out the testing of tabulators like other communities do.
Okay.
Then, yeah.
So have you ever counted, like, on average throughout a year, what your average weekly hours is? I think that would be interesting if you don't have it.
We
Yeah,
have it,
yeah.
I have it in certain sections of time, especially that September, October, but I get so sad and so frustrated that I've stopped doing that.
Okay.
Because it's a lot more. I mean, just think about this. Election day, we show up at the office at 5 a.m., and in a presidential year, we will not leave until 1 or 2 or 3 in the morning. So that's well over 18, 20 hours in one day, and our week is 20 hours. So in one day, we've worked a week. And if in a year like this, there's a presidential preference primary, an August primary, and a general election, that's 3 weeks and 3 days. That's why I stopped keeping count.
In addition to that, if I may add, we have conventions that we have to go, we have educational classes that we have to continue to keep our certification. So that's additional time and travel and time away. It's the time, that's the thing, when early voting. We figured there's 12 weeks of extra work if you take the 4 hours a week. Who has 12 extra weeks for a job when your life is already full with other things? So that's why I just said, okay, it's time. When the poll work
I want to re-emphasize that because we haven't talked about the actual hours involved in early voting that's additional. When we added up all of the hours of early voting and the administrative work before and after, it adds up to 12 weeks in addition of 20-hour work weeks, in addition to the regular 52 weeks that we have. It is 12 more weeks within 52 weeks. So that gives you a start to the count of extra hours that we have. And there are sessions that run from 9 to 8 p.m. that we're there.
There's no way really, because even with the early voting, with all the laws and the bill, I'm reading 5 hours to study and take notes and say, we need to do this, we need to do this. So I talk to her, we need to do this. How are we going to break this down? How are we going to make this happen? That stuff is very time consuming, how do you put a time on that? It's like, I know Peter and all other people, the mayor. Mayor gets a certain, but he works way harder. All you people work. You work more than what you think you're going to work when you do a job and you try to do it well. So we're just saying it's time to be considered, and we're supposed to have a meeting with HR and coming up, and the city attorney. So we are encouraged that at least they have listened. They're going to listen already with a sympathetic ear, and then make adjustments based on their findings with what other towns are doing. But no two towns, as you know, in Connecticut are the same. One person makes $7,000 because somebody else is doing full-time all the work. Kerri explained it very well. We're there. It's the way that Milford set it up many years ago with the governing board. So it's just.
So, thank you for your professionalism, your dedication, and that explanation. I appreciate it. I just want to add to Alderman Archeolo's comment about the fireproof file cabinet. That one's going to keep me up at night, that there's so many concerns about, potential risks of early voting and keeping our elections safe. I can't see why it wouldn't be prudent to spend that $5,000 and get that file cabinet. My question is, do you have an actual quote, or is that just a ballpark?
That's a ballpark, $6,000 it cost.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's a 5,000, it was 5,000 cut, but 6,000 was your request, sorry. Yes.
Because we paid 5,000 before, so I'm sure since 2017, there's been an increase. So it was just a guess. But we didn't want to get a quote unless,
I also don't want you to lose sleep. We believe that 500 to 1,000 early voting ballots can be protected overnight, and then and locked and fireproof, and all of the chain of custody requirements that we need to keep. And then we will make arrangements working together to bring those ballots to the city clerk's vault, where they will stay then until counted on election day. And we will just do that on a daily basis. So I don't want you to worry that we're not going to make it this time.
Thank you.
We always make sure it gets done.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Alderman Casey.
To you, the chair. I just want to put in the historical context. Kerri, when did you get elected for registered voters?
Well, I took over for Antoinette when she retired in March of 2014. So I was elected in November of 2014, about 10 years ago, but I started as a deputy registrar in 2007.
And has there been any increase in the register of voters' salary since you've been there?
Only the COLA increase, the cost of living increase, we follow the MSA contract. So whatever percentage increase based on COLA, we have been fortunate enough to receive, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Healy.
Through you to the registrars. The question that I have is, when you're tracking this information, we're talking again about the salary, it pretty much jumps out, and we all know that the requirements for the position have changed through the Secretary of State's office, through legislation that has been passed. I would certainly encourage you to track the hours relative to full-time equivalents on a spreadsheet that delineate, again, the tasks that need to be performed and, the individual hours that are necessary to do that. It certainly is going to build value in terms of your presentation on this particular matter. My key question is, again, making sure that you are meeting contractual obligations, and more importantly, is this budget, will this fulfill your statutory obligations for all the elections that we're currently facing in the budget year?
So noted on your first part of your statement, and we are doing that. And secondly, I would say it will be very close as long as we don't have an August primary. If we have an August primary, I do not believe this will cover, either in the elections account or in our overtime or in our seasonal account, the money required to do our work.
And what would that dollar, do you have an estimate as to what that would take?
We asked for approximately $200,000 because that's what we estimated August primary with 7 days of early voting and 14 days of early voting at a general election would cost.
Yeah, I'm showing
in the elections account.
I'm showing a differential from department request to mayor recommended of $48,674.
Go to page 4.
Are you looking at
Oh, I'm
elections?
sorry. Well, there it's even higher. So it's 73,350 on the election side.
If we're talking about the election account now, the finance board
Okay.
recommended $150,000.
Oh, okay.
And I think that we can get away with that if we don't have the August primary.
Right.
Okay. And your estimate would be?
$149,750. And I'd say that tongue in cheek, but in 2020, I believe that was the overall cost.
It's 140,000 if you count in that we got 13,600 transfers after the fact, and 5,000 transfer, and a 17,000 grant. And then we had an audit that we had to go back and get another transfer. So I know the actual cost was 118,000, but really it was 140,000.
And it's hard because we did not have early voting in previous years. So because the turnout was only 6% overall, and even less in early voting, we don't have a lot to go on to estimate the cost. But as we laid it out, it looks to me to be about $50,000 just for early voting staffing of those moderators, CVRS workers, ballot clerks, ballot tenders, the box tenders, and assistant registrars who will also serve as greeters, same-day registration officials, and fill in for breaks. And then the various numbers of checkers that Alderman Jenkins asked about. That's the estimate that we've come up with regarding the 8-hour days. There are 12 of those, and the 12-hour days, there are 2 of those. We estimate approximately $50,000, and then the cost of staffing the general election. If the turnout in early voting is less than 500 people a day, that's a 20% turnout. We're looking at a 60% turnout at the polling location. We are going to have to staff almost full, like we would do for any other presidential in the past. If early voting increases, we will lessen the number of people we hire on election day. But we won't know until the last minute. And the last minute, we're also trying to prepare to pay these people. And we have to then figure out, are we in time for a budget transfer hearing with the Board of Finance, or worse, with all of you. No offense, I don't mean you're worse, I just mean the process is more cumbersome. All at the same time that we're trying to finalize the election work itself. And that delays these people getting paid.
If that were the case and you needed the additional funds for this, question to the finance director, you would be able to fulfill their request directly?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Alderman Healy, yes, in the past I've been able to review all of the accounts and make a recommendation to the registrars and the Board of Finance, including the mayor. Thank you.
Any more? Alderman Bevan.
Thank you, through you, to the Director of Finance. If we give the Registrar of Voters, the full amount that they're looking for, the $253,000, and they only spend what the Board of Finance actually recommends of the 205, the difference, will that automatically go back into the general fund?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Bevan, yes. Normally that would go back to the general fund balance.
Thank you.
Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the early voting, just another unfunded mandate from the state amongst all of the other unfunded mandates from the state that puts it on the municipalities. And we keep voting for the same thing over and over. It's like doing the wrong thing and trying to right the ship. But thank you for all the hard work that you guys do to make it work. But we always have to remember, this is another unfunded mandate. Thank you.
Any more questions for the Registrar of Voters? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
The next department on our budget hearing schedule is elections, page 14, page 14.
That's what we just did. We just did that.
What's that?
did registrar elections.
We did them together.
Okay. So Karen doesn't have any questions to answer. So we'll skip over the elections and go on to Human Resources Department, page 41. Miss Tanya Barnes. Good evening, Tanya.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Are you able to hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you for having me tonight present my budget. I know there are many of you who are new, so I'll just give a quick little overview of what the HR department is responsible for here in the city. So we do all of the recruitment for all civil service and non-civil service positions, except for the uniform position. Police and fire handle their own recruitment. This year, just a couple of the top positions that we've recruited for: library director, benefits and pension coordinator, currently recruiting for payroll supervisor, the CDBG coordinator, public health nurses, that is a continuous search for those, clerk A's, the certified tax clerk, and as the city clerk mentioned, the certified vitals clerk position, and then a number of public work positions that we are routinely recruiting for. As part of civil service, we have to conduct testing that range from performance testing to computer testing to written exams. Then once the employees are selected, we do all the onboarding, orientation, and so forth. In collaboration with finance, but the HR side, we administer the HRS system, MUNIS, and work very closely with payroll for the personnel action forms that are processed on a weekly basis. We work closely with them for the 1099 forms for the ACA mandate and any new changes as a result of contract negotiations that need to be implemented in the system. Benefits administration, we handle benefits administration for all of the active employees and retirees. That includes health for active and retirees. We do open enrollment for both active and retirees throughout the year, and we administer the two health plans that the city offers, which is the PPO and the HSA plan. We also administer the life insurance, processing the bill on a monthly basis, as well as reviewing and making changes in processing claims and so forth for active retirees, and that includes employees in the senior center as well. We do process all of the unemployment claims and go to those hearings. In terms of employee relations, we handle any investigations that come before us, CHRO investigations, as well as grievances. We have had a very successful wellness program that we run for employees, and we also include Board of Ed employees in those initiatives as well. The pension administration is out of my office as well, and that we do everything from working with the pension board on a monthly basis to run the meetings and processing all of the applications for retirees. The retirees that we handle in terms of pension also includes a couple of unions in the Board of Ed side, not the certified teachers or anything like that, but food service, maintenance folks, we're the ones administering the pension for that. And so that's payments, any new retirees, changes that happen on a yearly basis and so forth. And then the Medicare Part B reimbursement. We collect all the data, review it, and then send that for processing through accounts payable with the city, and that happens on a quarterly basis. In terms of training initiatives, I try to work with various departments, and we've done some things in terms of team building where necessary. We've also been doing some professional development trainings and trainings for new supervisors that are promoted newly, and so forth. So that's an area that we work with. And the labor relations side, we work very closely. I work very closely with the city attorney's office in contract negotiations, any arbitrations and arbitration hearings that we have to go through, grievances, pension agreements, negotiations, and risk management in terms of workers' comp claims and things of that nature. So that's just a very broad overview of what HR is responsible here in the city. In terms of the budget, there are just a couple of lines overall stayed flat. There's just a couple of lines where I requested an increase, and I'll just explain why. Seasonal temporary line, I had an initial funding of $2,500, and I requested an additional $2,500. Last year we did it, we brought a high school graduate who was going into the HR field as a freshman in college. This year we're looking for actually a college student to do an internship with us for the summer. So that is just looking to cover the cost. As you all know, minimum wage increased this January again from $15 to $15.69 an hour. So to try to get a junior or sophomore junior college student, we would need to pay at least $16 an hour. So that's to cover $16, about 25 hours a week. But it's a great way to bring somebody that is going into the field. They can get some hands-on experience and help us with some projects and things of that nature for the summertime. So that's where that increase came. The medical and dental line, that's a line that we use to pay for independent medical exams that are requested by the pension board. So if an employee is seeking a service-connected disability, meaning that they have gotten injured on the job and are seeking to be retired on a service-connected disability, per the pension agreements, all the various pension agreements and the pension ordinance, it requires the board to seek 2 independent medical exams. This past year, we had 4 employees seeking those, and that means 2 tests per employee. And when I first got here, I think we could find doctors that would do IMEs for $750. Now the minimum is $1,500. We had 1 employee that needed to have psychiatric IMEs that cost $5,000 each. So that is to cover that increase there. The other line was under medical and professional fees. That line we utilized to pay for pre-employment physicals and drug testing and all of the DOT-regulated drug testing for CDL holders. And so the cost has increased, and they passed it on to me, and I'm including that in the budget, so we're fully funded. But the providers that we have been using just, it went from $58 to $63 a test, and so we're accounting for that. On the training expenses, again, as I said, one of the areas that we are looking to enhance more is to provide training. I've also been working closely with the IT director to try to secure training for staff in order to utilize all the great new systems that we're using with the city, but allow people to be able to hone in their skills. Under advertising, I believe I increased that line by $500. Again, routinely we have between 20 and 30 vacancies, and so posting those jobs is expensive. And we try to be conservative and use other methods that are not as expensive as newspapers, but nonetheless, every time we post, it ranges between $700 and $1,200. And the final line was under office supplies. I increased that by $1,000. It hasn't increased much since I have been here for the last 10 years, and as we know, everything has increased, and everything that we do in my office, we have to document, so paper and so forth has increased, so that's where I added that. And with that, I will open it to any questions you may have.
Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Good evening, Tania. Historically, just talking about the seasonal temporary positions, historically, it looks like $2,500 was expended in this particular account. Can you tell me what kind of tasks those people are given, and why can they not be accomplished by the rest of the individuals in the office?
Well, that's actually the seasonal. I never had real seasonal funding in the past. Last year was the first year that I received the funding. And it was a program that I implemented, thinking that it would be a good idea to try to get people into, we have worked in the past, I should say, with the Board of Ed for seasonal programs and trying to bring interns in the summertime. And so I was trying to find ways to bring people into the profession, and especially in public sector, it is very challenging to try to bring folks into the human resources field. So folks and students that were really showing an interest in going into the human resources field and wanted to get some hand-on experience and work with us and understand it's very different than in private sector working in civil service environment. In the private sector, you submit a resume, people look at it, and that's that. With civil service, you have to learn the system, people have to go through testing, everybody needs to be responded to. It's a different process. So I started the program last year. It was a success, but this year I wanted to bring somebody else, somebody that was from a college graduate or in college at the moment. So that's...
Now, it sounds like a good idea, but I don't know if we're in the business of training, doing the training in this particular spot when no particular task is given to them. It's only for a training and making it a good, feel-good kind of thing?
No, they do support us during the summer, and they do some audits for us. They assist us with various projects, data collecting that we do. So they're not just showing up. We do have them do work and work with us.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Federico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the Human Resources Director. Just have a question. I didn't hear you touch on it. Maybe I missed it. You had an additional position for a special project manager part-time. What was the thinking behind that in your original request?
Yes, I had put the request last fall while Mayor Smith was in office. He supported me bringing on a part-time HR projects manager. Especially through negotiations, there's a lot of cost analysis that I do myself. There was also a compensation analysis that he wanted to, for my office to complete. And so he funded, and we went through the Board of Finance, and then ultimately the Board of Aldermen approved. And so I hired somebody to come in 20 hours a week to assist. One of the projects that he has helped with is a compensation study. Initially was for the non-represented employees. As we're going through negotiations, he's supporting obtaining data on the various unions that we're now negotiating with. It's important to have up-to-date information and data as we go into negotiations. Most of the time, if not all the time, as we're going through a negotiation, all the cost analysis I do. So that's additional work that I just do, after hours, on the weekends or what have you. So I was looking for somebody to support me as we go through that. And another project that we're working on is revising the civil service rules that last were touched in 1976, or 75 rather. So things of that nature. And I put a request to continue it in this budget year, but it was not approved in the mayor's budget, so that's why I didn't bring it up.
Okay, so does that mean after June 30th that position ceases to exist?
Correct.
Okay. And what does that mean for you?
I will take on the work that I was doing before.
Okay.
That I was able to pass on for a little while.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Human Services? Alderman Healy.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the HR Director, would you be able to, if you had that part-time person 20 hours a week, as you do currently, providing you with additional resources, are you able to use any of the 4,800 special services funding going forward, or that's completely obligated? That's on page 41 of your personnel services.
That pays for, that covers the EAP services that we provide for city employees. Employee Assistance Program?
Okay.
That covers that
So-
line.
So that's completely obligated for that
Correct.
intended purpose? Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Any more questions for Human Resources? I don't see any. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you,
Barnes.
everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you for your presentation and answering all our questions. The next department on our budget hearing schedule is Public Works.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may make a suggestion, as in years past, we've considered Public Works as one block, since there are many divisions of Public Works and the same two folks presenting for all. If you're interested, I think that might be helpful for this evening.
Yeah, that's what I was planning on doing. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening.
If you could make a general presentation of all your departments, and I'm going to open the questions up for all of them, so we don't have to open up each individual one, okay?
Sure. So thank you for having the time to bring us in. I believe we're the last ones up, so you guys are probably relieved on that. We oversee a number of divisions, approximately 107 positions. And of those 107, it encompasses the administrative office, the Public Works office, Parks and Highway, garage, building maintenance, engineering, and wastewater. And that's really my presentation. I'm here to open up questions to people that have questions about the budget, where we stand, where we're going.
Alderman Healy.
Director Saley, it's my understanding that you've accomplished 10 years of service recently to the city of Milford?
Hard to believe it went by that quickly, yes. Thank you.
Congratulations. Looking at the comprehensive work within the Public Works area and all the different components and cost centers that are there, are we able to say with the funding that you are allocated that you're going to be able to meet all your contractual obligations through this budget?
Yes, at the present budget, yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Marlowe.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Scott.
Question for you. I know I see in here, when the fire department was here, they were talking about getting a Class A mechanic or a master mechanic. Is that something that's reflected in here?
It is.
And right now, the work that's being done, will this eliminate the need to go out to have vehicles repaired, or is it still, this just takes more of a burden off of that?
I wouldn't say it would eliminate it 100%, but the thought process behind it is to have internal candidates, internal employees that are more familiar with the equipment. Presently, I'm speaking of the fire trucks. They're being shipped out to a number of areas outside of this town, and a number of employees on those subcontractors are working on it. We felt, and actually I spoke with Chief Fabrizi today about this, we felt it was prudent for the city to have the opportunity to have full-time in-house employees. I think this is where we bring value to the city with these type of positions, and we work with Mayor Genetasio and Tania Barnes to look at the position and also to increase the wages on these positions. It's a really specialized field, the emergency response vehicle field. And the other part of it is, as everyone's aware, the vehicles of yesteryear are gone. These are very sophisticated vehicles with a lot of issues that potentially could happen. And one of the things that comes up that most people probably aren't aware of is the salting component that we're using in the wintertime has an adverse effect on a lot of the equipment that we have, but especially the fire apparatus.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just ask again. Right now, in the, let's say, where is that number reflected right now, and what is subbed out, so to speak, for repairs?
Yeah, I wouldn't have that exact number. That would be Chief Fabrizi. I could get that to you. Let me just make a note for that. But the vast majority for fire is being subbed out right now.
Okay.
They have general, and I probably am speaking a little out of turn, my understanding is the fire department checks the vehicles, I assume the liquids and things, oils, but if there's something needs preventive maintenance or something that's routine maintenance, it gets sent out.
And is all the public works vehicles repaired in-house?
No, they're not. There are some that our garage does a very, very good job, but presently we're down 3 positions.
Right.
Part of it is because we do not pay enough to retain quality candidates.
Okay.
And to have people come in. We've posted a number of times for the mechanics. That's the other reason for this master mechanic, these 2 positions, to try to see if we can incentivize people to come to work for the city.
And Mr. Chairman, as well, just to switch departments here to wastewater.
Sure.
With the recent push of apartments and such within the city, and it seems that that's the direction that we're headed in, is our infrastructure able to handle what new apartments, these new buildings?
That would be no.
Okay, and is it new do we have to add pump stations, or what would it be that is going to be a cost to us at some point?
So it's going to be a significant investment in the city. This has been not just in the last 6 months, it's been the last 10 years that we've seen this on the horizon. The last year with the increase in water flow because of rainwater coming in, anyone that's familiar with the system that we presently have, when we have a lot of water coming in rain, it definitely overwhelms our treatment plants. There's a direct correlation between rainwater and groundwater, and anyone that has a house with a sump pump knows that their sump pumps are running a lot more, and truthfully a lot of people tie into the sanitary system even though that's illegal. It's one of the things that we have to do, get more aggressive with, but politically it's not always the easiest thing to do, that's the truth. And Mayor Genatasio has been very, very helpful in regards to this, not only me explaining the circumstance, and it's going to make some residents unhappy, but we're sending out notices and telling people, hey, we're going to have some issues here, we're going to smoke test. We're also pipelining in some of the areas. But this has been something that it's definitely been on the horizon, and it's going to take a significant investment over the next 2 to 10 years to get this up where we need to be.
Thank you. And you have a plan laid out, obviously, for the improvements that are needed. How are you gauging what you need?
So Mayor Genatasio authorized us to do an SSES study, which is a total study over the plant, but we have a capital improvement plan that really dictates where we're going, pump stations that we're repairing, pipelining that we're going to be doing, and we're working with Deep up in Hartford to get this all put together so that we can move forward with it.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
Any questions for any one of the departments in Public Works? Alderman Federico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to the Public Works Director. First, I want to echo what Alderman Healy said. When I look at your budgets, it's a lot. You guys are doing a lot for the city, and we appreciate that.
Thank you.
I just have questions about a couple of lines. One is the city waste removal costs in the solid waste department. It's up $1 million over last year's budget. Can you speak to that?
I actually can, yes.
Okay.
And I will thank Mayor Genatasio for allowing us to do that. When Alderman Healy asked if the budget's been appropriately budgeted, I believe it is. We've been chasing our tail on this since 2019, when 2 things came together. One was recycling, where we used to get paid $20 a ton. We now are paying 87 and change to get rid of it. That equates to over $325,000 a year. We also, with no increase in manpowers, took over the transfer station, which at the time, the gentleman or the company that was running it, we were paying him $32,000 a month. They wanted to go to $40,000. We thought it was prudent for the city to go and take it over ourselves with some outlay of capital, but we did it within the confines of the solid waste division with no increased labor. It saved the city probably $700,000 a year. Through these different items that we've done, that's where we've been allowed to really cut as much fat out as possible. But now with our tipping fee going up for solid waste, MSW, and along with our not knowing where recycling is going to go, it's trending on the higher end, it's in the 80s. We thought it was prudent to put the dollar amount into that account.
Okay. I'd like, because it is $1 million, I'd like a better understanding of how we arrive at the million. So I guess my first question is the $2,075,000 for this fiscal budget, is that a real number, or are we going to exceed that?
When you say, is it a real number, what do you mean?
I mean, is that sufficient? Is that the correct estimate for this current fiscal year?
So and I'll let...
And that may be a question for Mr. Ardisi as well.
Well, I'll let Peter answer, but over the last few years, Peter's aware of it, we've done budget transfers at the end of the year. So we've taken money out of different accounts to make up for the shortfall in this account. And one of the things that everyone on this board probably knows is I'm not a big fan of bulk. Bulk is another expensive process. You know, it's anywhere between $350,000 and $500,000, depending on how much materials we pick up at the curb for both spring and fall. These are the questions that you're going to look at. But the budget there, we take money out of different accounts. Wages is one of them. Historically, since I've been here, we've been down between 22 and 27 positions. In the last 6 months to 8 months, we've done a pretty good job in filling positions. We're down to 17 vacant positions. When I first started 10 years ago, we had, I think it was 155 budgeted positions, 155, 156. Presently, right now, it's substantially less than that. It's 30 less, and we're down to 20 or 17 right now. So we're doing a lot more with a lot less, and I will say this for my divisions, you know, and just speaking about our department as a whole, I don't think there's any department in the city that's done more with less, and anytime there's an issue in the city, the staff steps up to the plate. From the Oyster Fest, which no one really sees, but it's a week's worth of time for our Parks and Highway division. And at that point, we don't cut grass for a week, which sends us behind on grass cutting because we have a smaller crew than we typically have. To all the events that go on every single weekend, the Milford Green, it's all exciting things. It's good to see. Walnut Beach is exploding. We did $1 million project down there a number of years ago that has just improved that area, and there's a ton of foot traffic. We also put everyone's aware, we put a new bathroom. We just winterized that bathroom this past year, so it's open year round. So there's a lot more work done for building custodians in regards to cleanliness, keeping bathrooms clean. Also the bathroom at the pickleball area up at Eisenhower, that was open year round this year too. Trying to access, so people can have bathroom access year round in the city. But these are all services that we offer with no increase in staff. It's been a push, and I think that's why when I met with Mayor Genitasso, we explained some of these concerns, and he was very helpful in getting the budget we think will be helpful for us. Now, with that said, I don't know where energy costs are going to go. Electricity, gas are very concerning right now, you know, there's always going to be a surprise somewhere on the books.
Yeah, I don't have any questions on the staff line. I, fully support that you should have what you need there. I just want to understand the $1 million increase. So maybe, I don't know if Mr. Ardisi has, through the chairman to Mr. Ardisi, do you have anything to add?
He won't know.
Okay.
So let me, listen,
okay.
I know I don't explain well, so I apologize. For the last 8 years, the account hasn't been funded appropriately. That's blunt. And now we've come to the head wall of this, where we have to fund it appropriately with the use that's going to come down the pike, which is people dumping our increased costs to dump and transport. And that's what we anticipated where we would be, somewhere in that, was it $1 million? I don't think it was $1 million. How much was the increase? I apologize.
It's $1 million over last year's budget. It was $2,075,000 in last year's budget, and it's $3,075,000 in this year. I'm on page 70, I believe.
73?
My copy's a little out of order. I think I'm on 76.
Yeah. Again, so that's what we were looking at. We were looking at the increase in costs of recycling, which we think is going to be about $375,000.
More or 375 total?
It's $375,000 total, right around there. And the tipping fees for our hauling that we're bringing to Bridgeport, that's going from, right now it's at 72. So when this budget was passed, it wasn't really adjusted for many, many years. And it's gone from 56 to 72, but it's going to 85 and change.
Okay, so that's 13, that's per ton, right?
Yes.
So that's $13 per ton?
Yes.
Okay. And approximately how many tons do we dump a year?
We're budgeted or we're permitted for 55,000. The other issue that you don't see in these costs are our MS4 requirement requires us to dispose of all street sweepings and catch basin material. Historically, in the public works world, they've rescreened it, redone it. That's no longer possible. So we take all our materials, we stockpile them, and then we bring them to Old Gate Lane, and they'll go on to the landfill. So that's what we anticipate with these costs.
Okay. So back to the $13 a ton, and we're permitted for 55,000. How much do we actually dump?
We anticipate this year we're going to dump about 37,000 tons.
37,000. Okay. So 37. Bear with me. Okay, so that's about 481,000. And the recycling, you said it's 375 this year. Do you know what it was before?
We used to get paid $20 a ton.
But what's a number I could compare the 375,000
Well, the problem with it adjusts. It's a commodity market, so it can adjust. There is no limit. There's no ceiling on the pricing.
Okay.
So it could go, right now we're paying 87 and change.
For recycling?
To bring recycling to Shelton, yes.
Okay. But how much is the increase from last year? In total?
The increase has changed, but what I'm trying to say is that the amounts that we've had, we've been underfunded for the last few years in that account. That's why it seems like such a significant increase. We've been underfunded. Do you remember, Peter, approximately?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Federico, the actual cost on average have ranged, from $2 million to $2.4 million over the past fiscal years. In this account, we've needed to transfer about $300,000 more or less into the account each year. So that represents the underfunding. And if you add the underfunding to the additional costs that Director Saley just mentioned, I believe that's how they came to the $3,075,000 figure.
Okay. Thank you. Just one more question. So when you say 2 million to 2.4 million, Mr. Ardisi, is that before the 300 got transferred in or after?
That is the actual, so that is after.
Okay. So 2 to 2.4 million. So if you assume the 2.4 million and you add the 481, that's how you get to the 3 million.
I'm a little confused. I just want to make sure I'm clear because you brought up a number. So right now, if we do, and I'm just trying to keep the simple math on it. If we do, $72 a ton, right? Just say all in, we're at $90 a ton, okay, to haul and to dispose times, just say 35,000 tons. That's 3.15 million. And what I'm trying to explain is for a number of years, this account was not funded appropriately. And when we went to Mayor Genitasu, we asked for it to be funded appropriately. And that's just for MSW. We're not talking recycling. Recycling is another 325 gross on that amount.
Okay. So you're looking at more at the total number than the year-over-year change?
I'm looking at the total number, yes.
Yes. So the recycling is anticipated to be in this line as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Recycling, but it's not only recycling, it's anything that we dispose of in the city goes into city waste. An example, if we have excess spoils of millings and we can't find a location for those and they get carted away, they go to an appropriate hauler and we pay anywhere between $8 and $12 a ton to get rid of that materials, but that's all in this account. Anything, like I said, from catch basin vacuuming the catch basins, and also sweeping the streets, that all gets into this account.
Okay. And the 35,000 tons, that's without recycling?
That's without recycling, yes.
Okay.
That's an estimate. It could be lower, it could be more, but that's what we think. And I don't want to complicate this. We also get commercial haulers that come in that offset some of these costs. Because the true number, if we did it your math would be like 380. But we have haulers that come in and dump, so we get reimbursed for that money.
Okay. Is that related to the residents that come in and dump, or is this separate?
No, that's separate.
Okay.
This is commercial haulers, All-American, Winter Brothers, or actually Oak Ridge, Bazzuto's. Those are our haulers. Independent, like junk luggers, they're another hauler that we would classify.
So they offset this cost?
When they tip, we take their money, and yes, it offsets their cost.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. DC, any idea what that typically runs? What was it last year? Do you have visibility to that?
Tonnage-wise?
Dollars.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Federico, the commercial waste expenditures and respective revenues years ago were placed in a special revenue fund, and last year in fiscal year 23, the cost related to commercial waste was 620, about, I'll round up to 627,000.
So to clarify, I'm sorry, but I just want to make sure we get this straight. So to clarify, that's not netted or offset in this line?
Which line are you looking at?
Still the city waste removal cost line?
That is not offset. In other words,
So it's somewhere else in the budget?
we pay for it, but it gets refunded back into it from the commercial hauler. So the commercial hauler comes and dumps a ton of trash. We haul it to there. They pay us, we take that money and clarify it, and it goes back into this account.
Okay, so that trash is in your 35,000, but the income from it is in your 35,000 tons, but the income from it is somewhere else?
Some of it is in that 35,000 tons,
Okay.
yes.
Yep. Okay. If I may, just one last question. We've been getting questions from constituents about the changes in the fees for residents at the dump, particularly those with pickup trucks. Can you explain that change and the thinking behind it?
I'm sorry, what was the last part of it?
You've been getting questions about the changes in the fees at the dump. Can you explain the change and the thinking behind it?
So we've been for a number of years looking at the costs associated with running the transfer station and also the dumping fees. We're one of the few towns that still allow people to come to dump for free. And if it was up to me, I'd charge everyone to come in. And I would say this, it's kind of like North Milford. North Milford doesn't have sewers. We don't charge them a sewer fee. So if people are going to use the transfer station, that's an added feature in addition to what your normal taxes pay. Your normal taxes should pay for your police, fire, Board of Ed, Public Works, snow plowing, and your trash picked up once a week and your recycling picked up twice a week. But if you're going to use the transfer station, which just in labor costs us $450,000 a year, that's not the equipment we have to buy, that's not the gas we have to put in. So when people use that, we believe that they should be responsible for some of those costs, because the person that doesn't use it shouldn't be offsetting those costs. That's number one. Number two, we believe that trash is going to go up after this year significantly again. It's going up to 85 and change. Right now it's 72 July 1st. So we looked at this and we said, hey, this is a legitimate concern of ours to try to make sure that people pay their fair share. And I know people are upset, certain people, but it's like, I'm just saying what I think is fair, and I think everyone on the board should think, if you're using an additional service, shouldn't you compensate the city for that? And other residents aren't using it. That's the question I asked you.
I appreciate the explanation. Can you explain what the change was?
So we had a dump fee or a ticket that you could dump twice a month up to 400 pounds for $30 a year. So you would literally get probably, 400 pounds times 12, 3,600, which is, round numbers, it's $200 worth of material for $30. And you could dump 4 times a month for $60, which would triple or double that. So it wasn't a cost advantage to the city, it was a cost savings to residents. And the vast majority of the people that use it, I hate to say it, are small businesses that use it. You know, if you can see, we take in about 1,500 to 1,600 tons a year from what we call free drop-offs. People that come with their cars. But anyone else in a truck or any kind of commercial vehicle, we do charge.
So what I've heard the most from residents is that the pickup trucks are paying more and the SUVs are not paying.
And I'd love to change that. Listen, and I could get into the detail of why that happened, but it would probably be not appropriate to have it on this dialogue right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that everyone should pay their fair share. I think anyone in the audience would say that. Well, we don't have really anyone in the audience, but people that are listening, if you're using a service, you should pay for it. And that transfer station costs us a tremendous amount of money to run. And as we all know, tax dollars are getting harder and harder to find. And I'm here to look for savings. And just to say to people, there's, like West Haven doesn't have a transfer station. We're offering a benefit, but shouldn't you pay for some of that? And we're not even asking you to pay the full fare. It's more than that.
Okay, yeah, and that was the point that people have made, is the garbage is costing you money, whether it's costing the city money and the department money, whether it's coming out of an SUV or a pickup truck. So the sentiment I was hearing was, can we lower it for the pickup trucks a little bit and charge the SUVs something?
There is someone that came in today that had an SUV loaded with sod, because they were resodding, and the tires could barely hold the weight. This is the truth. I'd ask people to sit there and see it. And it's truthfully, I'll say this, it's a very small segment of the people that are unhappy because they've gotten a free thing for years and it's no longer going to be free. I mean, that's just how I look at it. And you as Aldermen can change that, but I think it would be kind of ridiculous. We still offer a benefit that some other towns don't offer. And Fairfield's a classic example. I try to follow, they're probably the best public works department in the state, very organized, have a recycling coordinator, that's all they do, a full-time recycling coordinator. Now, they don't collect trash, your individual homeowners pay, but they charge every single person that comes to that transfer station. If you come in a car, it's $5 flat fee. We have to make it a little bit less easy for people to get rid of stuff. Trash is a big issue. I talked about wastewater years ago. I'm going to tell everyone on the board, trash is going to be a bigger issue too. Within the next 5 to 10 years, and hopefully I won't be here then, but you never know. But I will say that trash is a big, big deal. And this isn't politically correct, but people have to pay. The amount of stuff that we throw away in this town is ridiculous.
All right, thank you very much for your answer.
Thank you.
Alderman Archiola.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to Public Works Department. Hey, guys. I just had a quick question on building maintenance. It looks like the Board of Finance and the mayor reduced the line item for electricity by $100,000, and it looks like you spent $150,000 more than that for the 23-24 year. I'm wondering if anything's changed or what the rationale is behind that.
So we're cautiously optimistic they're going to buy futures on the gas that produces electricity for both Parsons and also for and I don't know if everyone is aware of this, we have a fuel cell down at the Beaverbrook plant on Deerwood Ave. And those are some of the things that I'd like to show the Alderman. When you have time, give me a call. I'd like to, take not everyone at once because we don't want a quorum, but give me a call and I'd like to show it to everybody. So that's our goal. With that said, this is the volatility in the market. You just never know what might jump up. But we thought it was, we got a little aggressive with that account, but I think we can make that work.
Okay, if you can make it work, thank you.
Any more questions for Public Works? Alderman Moran and
Thank you, Chair Petro, through you to Director Saley. I just wanted some clarification. I'm looking on page 75, which has to do with the mechanics.
Yes.
So I know in the past, I think it was the last budget cycle, you mentioned about the master mechanics. I'm happy to see that it's come to be. So in doing that, though, it looks like there's the elimination of 2 automotive mechanics. Is that a correct interpretation?
So we're taking those positions and elevating them with higher
Right.
salaries.
Okay.
So you can say it's eliminated, it's really not, it's improving the position. That's how we're not.
But you budgeted for basically the same amount, but then the Board of Finance increased it, bumped it up?
So what happened was, I originally made a budget with the mayor, and I made a mistake. I went away on vacation, and it got screwed up. So I had to go to the finance department board and say, hey, listen, there was a clerical thing that I made the mistake on. So, and it was totally my fault. But no, these positions were mechanics, and we're elevating to master mechanics.
Okay. And so I know in the past, too, there's been challenges with filling the positions, just positions in general, because of salary. So now you have these 2 elevated positions. Have you begun to look for individuals to fill that?
So I spoke with a number of garages before we went here, and the market's changing every day. And this was 8 months ago. We felt pretty strongly that the dollar amount that we put in this budget was going to attract some people. But again, you just never know. I think the city is a great company to work for. I think it offers great benefits, great quality of life. The salaries have been a struggle on some of these, and we're working, I'm talking Public Works. The Supervisors Union got settled a few months ago. You guys approved it. The bargaining unit as a whole, we're negotiating a contract right now, and we're looking at certain increases that will hopefully pass this board if we get it, if we get to that level. But yeah, salaries are definitely a concern.
So no interested candidates at this point yet then?
No,
has it been
I'm sorry.
posted or?
So I have to wait for you guys to approve it before I can even start the process.
Okay.
Yeah, as soon as, and I don't know if everyone realizes, maybe I shouldn't, Tanya Barnes' 18th year anniversary is tonight, so she was here, but she left. As soon as this board approves the budget, we will start that process.
Okay, great.
Alderman Bevan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. You mentioned about salaries and sometimes the lack of getting personnel for the wages that we're offering. I'm just suggesting, like I did with the police department and the fire department unions, that when your next contract comes up, that you at least start with the cost of living increase and go from there. That's my only statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alderman Casey.
To you. Getting back to the transfer station, so you're charging for trucks, but not SUVs and like a sedan currently?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And as I've spoken before, I would like to change that. Especially when our fees go up July 1st to, they're going to increase $12 a ton, I think it would make sense. But I'll make sure that the aldermen are aware of it and they can have their input on it.
How do you minister that? Like, what has to happen for you increase the fees? Like, how do you get jurisdictions over that? Like, how do you, for the mayor, or like, how do you go about it?
And Peter's not here, but it's pretty clear in the ordinance, I believe, that it's just the finance director and myself sit down and we look at our fees and say, okay, where do we want it? And in a lot of ways, the board here asking these questions are very helpful because truthfully, for a number of years, the board just rubber stamped a lot of things. So it's good to see people asking the questions. And like I'm trying to stress, we need your input also to where you think we should be going on some of these things.
Also, you have to be a Milford resident or have a Milford sticker?
You do, but we've had some issues where people try to sneak in, and so we put down, we audit sometimes where we put someone down that's on light duty to check licenses. it's not a high number. That's why we don't have a fourth person down there, because the average person costs me $120,000 a year between benefits, fringe, salary. So we looked at saying, oh, we're going to save this much tonnage, but we're going to cost this much for the employees. These are the things we balance.
Thank you. And I've been to deposition. How do you, I assume you can't dump everything, I think toxic waste. How do you police that, or to explain that?
Yeah, so we don't take toilets, we don't take ceramic, we don't take concrete, sheetrock. It's something that we've talked about offering. And truthfully, if we charged a fee for everyone coming in, it's probably something I would look at, because what do I call dirty dumping, people dumping around the town. I think people just want a place to dump that's fair. And I know some people might think that, but I think we offer a very fair rate for what we're doing, for the services we offer. So that's something that we would probably look at to potentially improve or increase services. City carting takes it. The difference with city carting and us, we charge by the pound. City carting has a 1 ton minimum. And I think the 1 ton is right around $125, $130 a ton right now. So if you have a half a ton, you're paying $130 there.
And not to get too much in the weeds, but I know I used to drive by the transfer station, and there's plenty of people, plenty of areas that by the transfer station, they dump afterwards, and then the transfer station is either closed or I don't know what. But how do you regulate that? People is a video camera or something we can, I don't know, but how can you address that? Because
if it's on private property, we typically call the private property owner and tell them they have to clean it up. We also make a run in that area, the perimeter we call it. But there are a lot of people that are very disrespectful, to be honest with you, Mike.
Thank you.
And it's not just in that area. We have dirty dumping throughout the city. Most people don't see it. We'll get a call in the morning. We try to get somebody out there right away to get it cleaned up.
Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Good evening, gentlemen. Let's go into that other problematic area of electric vehicles. First of all, how many do we have in the city?
So presently we have, and thank you for bringing this up, because I was going to clear up some misinformation that got brought up a while ago about the electric vehicles. We have a number of Leafs, the small Leafs that we have in the city. I think there's 3, and we have 5 Lightnings, the Ford Lightnings, F-150 Ford Lightnings. Just so everyone's aware, those Ford Lightnings were ordered over a year and a half ago by the previous Mayor Blake. There was 2 standard ones, or I'm sorry, 4 just regular standard ones that were done with not an extended mileage. There were 220 miles was the range. And then there was an XLT that was ordered, which was a step up above that. During the whole process, because Ford, this was a monster program for them to get these out, they sent the extended range. The basic ones were $48,000, because I know there was some information about different pricing. They sent the wrong ones to us. They sent the extended range ones, which are 60, but they honored their price and they sold it to us for $48,000. So that was a big savings to the city. The XLT, for some reason, they stopped production, and they contacted us and they informed us, this was probably 4 or 5 months ago, they informed us that the XLT wasn't going to be produced for at least another year, and when it was going to come in, it was going to be the same price as what I could buy the higher end Laredo, I think it's called, right now. So I made the decision to purchase that with the ARPA money because it was the same price as what we were going to pay a year from now to get it. I don't know where everyone else's feelings. The electric vehicles are tremendous. I can't drive across the country with them, but they're tremendous vehicles. Anyone that would like to get in one, they drive well.
So when they break down on the road, what do you send out, gas or electric?
Alderman Vitale, you're trying to get a gotcha moment here. There's no gas in
no gas. It's not a hybrid. So are we addressing the repair issue in the garage with electric vehicles?
When you say the repair issue, what are you referring to?
In other words, if they break down, are you guys in the garage ready to repair anything that happens to the electric vehicles?
Truthfully, there's not a lot to repair except for the batteries.
But it's more electronics, right? So do you have the personnel who's certified or can deal with all that? Because I remember at one time you indicated that if we went to electric vehicles, the changeover in the garage would be tremendous. looking for technicians, looking for parts and whatever. So I don't know if that still holds true, or did we address that?
You have a better memory than me because I don't remember that, but that's not unusual for me. Okay, so listen, I'm a big fan of the electric vehicles. I wouldn't park them underneath my house. I'd park them outside because of the fire components, but they're great vehicles. I think they're a good resource for the city. We're expanding our charging stations at the present time. And for what the city needs, which is we're a local town, we don't drive 300 miles a day, very low use, and the batteries are the most expensive thing to get replaced. I don't know, does anyone have an electric vehicle here?
No. The mayor has one. But the issue again is, if they break down, are you able to, and however the breakdown is identified, are you able to address the breakdowns of these electric vehicles?
So at the present time, the software we have, yes, but if it's something that we can't go back to, we send it back to the dealer. If there's something that we don't have that can't fix it, we will send it to the dealer. That's why, you know, these are the things that we do on a regular basis.
And they were purchased with ARPA money?
Yes, through ARPA money. And that was the other thing, the vehicle that was purchased, the high-end one that the mayor is driving was, I think, $78,000 just to clear the air on that.
Were you allocated X amount of dollars in ARPA monies?
Me personally?
Not you personally, but
Just
the
wanna make
department.
sure I'm clear.
Could be, you personally.
The ARPA money, there was a number of projects, but the vehicles were underneath Public Works.
Is there any money left in the ARPA monies for you?
For us, no.
You used all the ARPA
No, we
monies?
have money still available that we have to do. I met with Steve today. There's a heating system at Parsons. There's a number of other projects that have to be done between.
I guess the most important thing here is, like other departments that might have invested in personnel, you didn't invest in any personnel in ARPA monies, have you?
I find that kind of funny. The reason being, when I started 10 years ago, I had 155 employees. We have substantially less than that presently. The savings to the city every year is over $3 million. And with that said, we're getting more work than we ever got done. And listen, it's not easy. You know, I know someone posted something on social media. I'm not a big social media person, but you know how people are. People call. And I say this, I give everyone my cell phone. I give everyone, call me anytime if there's an issue. But someone mentioned about a catch basin that hadn't been cleaned at, I think, 59 Broad Street. There's an electronic, anyone that wants to make a complaint can go online, 24/7, 365 days a year. And I check it a lot. I know Rob does, I know Steve does. We never got a complaint on that address. So I tell everyone, my phone number, 203-209-4402. If you need to get in touch with me, just call me directly.
But you didn't answer the question.
What was the question?
Have you spent any of the ARPA monies on personnel?
I just answered that, I thought. I said I'm down positions. How could I get more people if I'm down positions? No. No.
Obvious, well, no.
No.
Thank you.
Okay.
Alderman Archeolo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. I actually just have a follow-up on the transfer station.
Sure.
I'm wondering, are there other municipalities, you mentioned that West Haven doesn't have a dump, but do we charge extra to people? Is there maybe a mechanism in place, or could we have a mechanism in place to charge people from outside the city who dump an extra fee?
So you can come here and dump, and we just charge you the fee that we charge. So we don't.
But it's the same for Milford residents as it would be for like West Haven or anything.
Yes. The benefit is someone that comes with a car or a minivan, and I'll share this, I brought my minivan there many times. Okay, so I'm one of those people that used it.
Me too.
I enjoy it, but I also think that I should start paying. I think everyone else should start paying. But yeah, we don't restrict people coming. We just restrict the free part.
Okay, yeah. Just maybe a revenue thought. I don't know, like, I'm equating it to like our beaches or something, where, you know, a discounted rate to dump would be seen as a perk to be living in Milford, you know.
Listen, I think that's something we can talk about, to look at that. But I also think that the expense associated with that is pretty tremendous to run that transfer station. It's not inexpensive.
Okay, good to know. Thanks.
Any more questions for Public Works? Alderman Healy.
Through you, Chair, to the Director, on bulk pickup, which is currently ongoing, operationally, what's the stress on that relative to being able to staff it and do that? I know that this time of year in the spring, you drive around, the municipality and you see everything that's out, in the street, and actually it's unsightly. And to be able to, handle that, what are the cost factors?
So the spring bulk is approximately 2,200 tons, 2,300 tons, but that can fluctuate too. And the fall bulk is between 8 and 14. And again, those numbers can adjust. The stress is wear and tear on the equipment, wear and tear on the employees. My employees love it because it's overtime. I'm not gonna, say that's not the case. I would prefer to do something a little different, where we'd open up the transfer station, say a certain amount of time where people would have to bring their bulk, their stuff in. The easier you make it, the more things people throw away. And I've said this to a lot of people. I'm a big fan of Facebook Marketplace when you want to get rid of things. Like I was driving today, and someone put out a beautiful dresser that if they took a picture of Facebook Marketplace and said for free, they'd get rid of it in a half hour. The things that I've gotten rid of on Facebook Marketplace for free is a good thing. And one of the things we wanted to do at the transfer station was have a swap shop. It never came to fruition where people could bring things down and put them so other people could take them. Because I would highly recommend people look and see what's thrown out on a regular basis, not just in bulk, but at the transfer station.
If you eliminated the fall pickup and you just had the spring pickup, what would you estimate the cost savings to be?
Probably, Rob, what would you say, 150, 200 grand?
Yeah,
150 to 225,000.
So
that's a risky thing, Alderman Healy. People like things for free.
Yes, but the issue is you're saying the costs are going up.
Yeah.
And, it's, not everyone is utilizing it, all the time. And if it's something that's worked in to your operational, budget that we look at and say this is going to, save the city of Milford, X, and we start with just spring cleanup and we eliminated the fall, that's substantial. And then, it could be another fee for service at a minimal and address it. You just, came up with, some suggestion as to allowing people, let's say, at a certain designated times to be able to extra staff at this transfer station, and you're looking to ensure, and then you're letting them come in with the pickup trucks and what they need, and they're bringing them in themselves instead of your staff and your equipment, wear and tear, and overtime. So if we came up with a more creative way that they could bring it in, for free without those additional costs, I think that overall that could be an initiative that we could, look at, that we should look at.
Yeah. I mean, one of the other things that happens with bulk, once mattresses and box springs go out to the curb, we can't recycle them. We have a recycling program at the transfer station that if you bring them down, they get into a secured location most of the time, and they're brought to Bridgeport and reconditioned, reused. Once they're on bulk, they're put at the curb, they're done. They go into trash. So that's an example of where we're wasteful. But you're right, there's a lot of different ways to look at this and changing where we're at and maybe opening after hours. It always amazed me when most people work 9 to 5, we shut down at 3:30. So it'd be beneficial to maybe be open, and it would still give my guys the opportunity to make some overtime. Excuse me. But I think we as a group should be looking at that with input. The other thing, just so everyone's aware, we are looking to go to a cashless system at the transfer station. We'll accept checks probably for 6 months once this transitions, but we're going to go to credit cards only, credit card payments. It's just a good accounting mechanism. It's Peter. Right, Peter? So, and these are the things that Rob Harrigan, as the new supervisor at Solid Waste, has brought to the forefront. I don't know if anyone has had the opportunity to go down there, but we have Geiger counters out now for what we call hot loads, and it's really spiked lately. Rob was the person that started that process and got it over the gold line. And hot loads are people are usually being treated for some kind of cancer treatments, and they're typically supposed to keep the material like diapers or any kind of personal hygiene stuff for 2 weeks, and most people throw it in the trash, and it registers there, and it's a nightmare for us. Because then we get down to Bridgeport, and their loads go off, and it's just a nightmare. But we've changed all that, and you know, it's something that, like, you guys probably don't know. No one knows. Tony Weeks, I'm not going to talk anymore. Tony told me I couldn't talk much longer. I just want to let you know.
Well, my comment would be relative to trying to streamline this big bulk waste pickup. I think it's a good initiative. Ward Willis, the chair, Alderman, is not here this evening, but we certainly bring it up in the Public Works Committee and see if we can get a consensus to get people together to work on that initiative and come up with a proposal and, you know, for implementation maybe next year.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any more questions for Public Works? Yes, Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris, just a question. That $12,000, is that for 12 computers, or is that a supercomputer that you need?
This is another gotcha moment I'm going to have. Which page are we on?
Page 63.
Now, do you think we'd buy a supercomputer?
You can buy computers for less than $12,000. Is it one or many?
Okay, so this is an example where the city's in the dark ages. We have people going out, our staff, they can't GPS stuff. Trees, we're going to get iPads for people with a cell service that will, so people can go out and take photos, GPS things, like the technology, so that when there's a complaint come in, they can do right on the iPad, they can respond.
So it's an iPad, it's not, even though it's a computer.
It's not just one computer, but we put it under the computer thing because it's a computer component.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just to add a little more information to Alderman Vitale's question, that is important because when we have, say, Storm Isaias that came through, every piece of debris needs to be cataloged and indexed in order to be eligible for federal reimbursement. So putting the cart ahead of the horse a little bit, this board, either next month or the following month, will be reviewing some documentation that will help the city get ahead of that so we don't have to call a special emergency meeting to help declare and make the city eligible to collect federal reimbursement. We found during Storm Isaias, we had to manage all of the call logs from police, fire, public works, and work backwards to catalog some of the debris that was taken from the streets. This investment in infrastructure will allow us to easily secure federal reimbursement should a natural disaster be declared.
Well, it's just good to be more specific than a computer. We know that it's a mini pad that does a little bit, has a little more flexibility than the computer piece.
Alderman Federico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Saley. Just a point of clarification. You had mentioned earlier that if the fees were to change to include SUVs and cars, that you would, of course, come back before us and discuss with the Board of Aldermen, but I don't think the previous change ever came before us.
Yeah, to be blunt, I don't even think you guys should be involved with it. It's really a decision that should be involved with myself, the mayor, and Peter Eridisi. But this board is very active, and I want to be proactive, so we're not trying to hide things. I think you guys should be setting policy, just my own, and let us run the city. And these are tough questions, but it's like, I think the people that the department heads have a pretty good feel for how the city's run, but you guys should be setting policy. And, that's just my personal opinion, not Public Works, just Chris Saley. But as a courtesy, I would say, if you want me to come before you and speak about it, we have the Public Works Subcommittee meeting, and someone brought up, and I apologize to the person, that we didn't talk about the master mechanics. It's not an intent to hide things from you. Truthfully, I'm getting a little older and I forget. And anyone that knows me, if I don't write it down, it gets lost, so.
May I ask, did you discuss it with the Public Works Committee, that change? Because maybe that's where it belongs.
I don't believe I discussed it with them either.
Okay.
And listen, this is a new era, if I can be honest. You guys are very active. Previously, I'll speak bluntly, we were told what to do all the time, and not by this board. And now we have an idea that we can actually be involved with decision-making processes in the city. And it's actually, I think every department head in the city feels refreshed by that.
Yeah. I'll put it this way. I agree that we should be focused on policy and budget, and that every little decision that's made does not have to come before us. This is an issue that's gotten a lot of public attention. I mean, you say it's a small group of people, but they are loud. And the one advantage to things coming before us is that there's a public comment period and people can come and, and share their comments. And then the change is a change, but it doesn't feel like it's happening, it adds transparency to the change.
So, and you're correct on that, but what I will say is, I wasn't brought up, we're talking about the community gardens. There was fees that were increased up there. And again, this is just my take. The information you received was not always correct. And the people that brought that to you, I met them afterwards and asked them about it. One of the things in particular was that they funded 80% of the fence. That was totally not correct. The city, taxpayers, funded a substantial amount of that. And I want to make sure everyone understands that area is not open to every Milford resident. It's to that group of people. And again, I say this, shouldn't they help fund for the services they're going to have? It's a beautiful program. No one's arguing that. But if they're going to use the community gardens for their own personal use, you can't go there. There's a gate, it's locked. You can't get the tomatoes and cucumbers. Yes, they donate some to Bethel. But they donated somewhere in the ballpark of $4,000 to $6,000 for that fence. We donated, I think it was $55,000 tax dollars. And that's the policy I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's a different subject that we've, has already been moved on from. I think in that case, there were a lot of people with needs being served by that small group of gardeners.
This is where we'll disagree. It was 100 people or 110, and I have 53,000 residents. I try to be equal and fair to every single one of them. And this is what I see as a person that works here for the city and cares about the city. Sometimes you have to differentiate the noise from 100 people and the actual facts. Like, I'd like to get the data and say how many people are actually complaining. And I think the elderly person that's barely paying their taxes says, wow, I'm glad that someone's looking out for these dollars like they're my own, as opposed to someone that uses the benefit over and over and over and doesn't pay for it.
Yeah, again, I think transparency with an issue like that helps, right? Letting the people come before us and have their say, then the change being explained to them in the public out in the open. I think that's helpful going forward.
Alderman Saley.
Thank you, through you to Mr. Saley. Hello, Chris. How are you? I think in expounding a bit upon Alder Federico's comments, when there are items that are increase of fees, changes of fees, new fees, obviously they're going to be a matter of import to at least some component of our community, sometimes larger components, sometimes smaller. And the effect upon those increases, raises, changes are such that they will affect items such as the budget, right? Because if there's a certain number of dollars needed to perform a service, as fees increase or decrease, as the case may be, that would then impact what you would seek in the budget. The mayor may consider doing what we as a board would do. So I think the tone here that's important, I think, to keep in mind, whether it's something that's outside of your purview or whether it's within your department, is that at least some of us on this board would, and me certainly, would like to make sure that when those types of items are dealt with, that they are part of a discussion, whether it is at a Public Works Commission discussion, a place where people can hear about it, know about it. It'll be reported in some way. There'll be opportunity for comment and consideration. And while the department head and others on these committees are going to have a lot more knowledge than we are here, there may be those types of items that are deemed potentially inflammatory enough one way or another, or impactful enough that a department head may think it makes sense to at least report on it rather than even asking permission, because I think there are resolutions in different ways in which we as a group can handle such items, whether they're brought to us or not. And by having that transparency, I think everyone is better informed, and we as a board will be more comfortable when discussing some of these items that have been affected by prior increases or decreases.
A point well taken. I appreciate it. You're correct, and I'll take the blame for that. I probably should have done a better job. And, it seems like the Public Works Subcommittee meeting, we've missed a few meetings recently, and we should get going on that.
Thank you, and it wasn't intended to be blamed, it was more just
No,
intended to be
listen, I take the blame. I
information
own it.
going forward about
Yeah,
how,
yeah.
at least in my world, how I'd like to see these things happen, so that by the time we get to a point such as this, it's already been dealt with, really, and we know the issue.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Public Works? I think you handled them all, Chris. Thank you very much for your presentation and answering all our questions.
Thank you very much, and I know it's been a long, I want to say thank you guys. You guys are all volunteers, and even though I don't always agree with what you say, I respect that you're up here doing it every day. The city's a great city, it really is. Oh, one more thing before I forget, because I know I'm not a social media person, but there was something about these dumb chairs, okay? The chairs were brought, we bought the chairs that you guys are sitting in, we bought a year and a half ago. We had extra chairs over at Parsons. Those are the chairs we brought back to City Hall, because the City Hall chairs were a disaster. And I think you know about the chairs, Phil, so in the sense of the old chairs that no one could replace, you know what I'm saying? So, that's all. Thank you very much.
I will entertain a motion to recess until the final budget.
Mr.
vote night.
Chairman?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to make a comment before we adjourn to go into recess, because the next time we come back, we will be, obviously, this board will be taking up a vote. As you can see, this has been a very transparent process on the city side of the budget. All of the departments have been appropriately funded, wages, contractual. You've asked the questions. I just have one question for our finance director. The overall increase on the city side of the budget, what it reflects, the percentage, because there's been some misinformation said, and I just want to clarify that before we go into a vote on our next meeting. Thank you. So Peter, if you can just share with the board what the percentage is of the city side increase of the budget, please.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the rest of the aldermen, the mayor's proposed budget on the city side increased the budget by 0.77%, and then there was just a slight technical correction update by the Board of Finance that kept it close to that increase. I believe with the Board of Finance, the city side of the budget went up 0.79%. And just as a separate side note, I wanted to clarify the figure I had originally mentioned on the commercial waste special revenue expenses for 2023. The number is actually $501,000. If I round up at 502,000, so it's not the 626. I had misread the number, so I just wanted to make that clarification. Thank you.
Yes. Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Peter. Peter, that 0.77%, what does that represent in mill rate at this point? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Vitale, I believe it's 1.55 mils.
Thank you, Peter, for all that information. Alderman Morenin.
Just a question through the finance director, through you, Chair Vitro. Last year's mill increase was?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Morenin, last year's total budget increase, I believe, was 0.52 mils.
Okay, so just for clarification, so last year was 0.552 mill increase, and this year mill increase is 1.55.
That is correct. It's 0.52 last year versus 1.55 mils with the Board of Finance.
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to piggyback on that, last year's increase, did that include the Board of Education budget also?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, yes, that was the total overall city plus Board of Education budget increase.
When you indicated the fact of 7.77 with a 1.5 approximately mil increase, this does not include education, right?
The 1.55 is again the total budget, city plus Board of Education. So it includes the Board of Education budget.
Thank you.
Alderman Saley. Once again, I will entertain a motion to recess until the final budget vote night, which does not been decided. The minute we do decide on a date, we all will be notified. So I entertain that motion.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to go into recess. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. We are in recess.